Jed, welcome to This Is Horror.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for asking me to come on.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to chat about your films such as Host and Dashcam and
Hmm.
Flashback. But to begin with, I want to go all the way back to your early
Right.
life because I want to know what were some early life lessons that you learnt growing up.
Oh, wow. Well, I grew up in London, which is a very metropolitan, busy city. And I mean, obviously, you're from the UK, so you'll know how the UK works. In London, you don't really look at people in the eye, because if you look at people in the eye, that means you either want to fight them or do something else with them. People keep to themselves in London on the most part. If you strike a conversation up with a stranger, you're just asking for trouble. And that doesn't line up with the American view of the UK being, Harry Potter land. It's actually quite dangerous over here. Um, but we like growing up in London specifically, it meant that I had lots of opportunities to find like horror films and magazines that were imported over from America, and horror books. It was just at my disposal. If I lived in a small little village somewhere outside, I don't know, in the Midlands or something, I think I would have had a problem, because I wouldn't have been able to scratch that itch that I had to like find stuff about supernatural deities and creatures and cryptids. Um, so yeah, and I'm half Filipino, and my mum instilled in me the fact that monsters are real, um, and that she often used to tell me as a kid that she's seen a werewolf. Now, when I try and bring it up with her, like explain the werewolf story again, mum, she gets a bit nervous and shy about it, but she genuinely believes she's seen a werewolf. I believe that she believes she's seen a werewolf. So just from a very early age, being into monsters because I thought they were real, because my mum told me they were, meant that I was doing research day and night about monsters and creatures, and which led me to horror movies, which led me to horror literature. And even I remember in school, like when people were learning the ABCs, I was reading, going to the school library and reading Jekyll and Hyde and Dracula and things like that, the classics. Um, so yeah, so horror's always been in me.
Yeah, well, I can certainly attest that living in London and being in London is the place for both horror and heavy metal because
Oh
it's
yeah,
funny that
yeah.
you picked the Midlands because I actually grew up in the Midlands.
Oh,
I
nice.
I grew up in Worcestershire and
I know it well, actually. I know Worcester quite well.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, specifically, my parents are living in Bewdley, which is near Kidderminster. The less we
Right.
say about Kidderminster, the better, quite
Yes,
frankly.
very,
But
very much so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, yeah, just kind of post university, like when it's like, well, I want to get into, these creative fields. It's like, well, get the fuck out of the Midlands to begin with,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna find a creative job
This
there.
is
I
what
mean,
Black Sabbath did.
yeah.
They have to get out and move to America to do creative stuff. But yeah, no, you're right. The like I was lucky. I'm very lucky that I was born in London, had the opportunities to do all the stuff, and again, be exposed to other creative people too, in music and film and other stuff.
Yeah, where about in London were you living, or are you
South
living?
I'm in South London, and I've lived all over the place in London, but I'm in Deptford, which is near
Ah, okay.
Greenwich. And yeah, South London feels like the only part of London that's at least semi-preserved, in terms of the kind of the culture. It's still a large part of it is non-gentrified. So I mean, you do get past, like, on my high street, there's like every other shop's a pop-up vegan, coffee shop and stuff like that. But there's still, really cool places where you can find like VHS. If you scramble around in boxes, they have a really cool market there 3 times a week where, you know, again, I find like weird horror movies and things, and in the markets. So yeah, I've always been in South London, and I doubt I'll ever move to anywhere else in London. At least I might move abroad, but at least in London, I can't live anywhere else but South.
Yeah, I spent about a year and a half living in Sutton, so right on the kind of edge
Hmm.
of
The
London, and
outskirts,
yeah,
yeah,
so if you wanted that kind of more rural Surrey area, you could go in one direction, and if you
yeah,
wanted to get the real South London, you could go
hmm,
in the other. So it was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
a good mix for someone from Worcestershire, as
Oh
I
yeah,
am.
exactly. But yeah, like you'd know, like living in London or very very near to London, you just have access to so much stuff, and I do count myself very lucky that I was brought up in this city, because I don't think I would have even known that making films or writing was a job until I saw other people doing it around me, and you only really get that in London, in the UK at least.
Yeah, so I want to know, since you brought it up, you mentioned your mother having a werewolf story, you
Hmm.
mentioned her instilling this belief, or her mentioning her belief in monsters from a very early age. So, I
Yeah.
mean, what are your personal beliefs or lack thereof pertaining to the supernatural?
Um, so I believe that there are things out there that we don't understand for sure. There's creatures that haven't been discovered. There's mysteries and marvels happening that we don't understand. And just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's supernatural. If you showed a medieval person an iPhone, they'd think it was supernatural. So there's just stuff out there we don't understand. Um, but I think at some point we will understand, and then we'll realize it's not, something crazy. But yeah, I don't really believe in any of those cryptids or ghosts or anything like that until I see physical evidence. Once I see verifiable evidence, in my entire life, I've wanted to see evidence of aliens, of monsters, of ghosts. Just no one no one has been able to find anything. And London specifically is a city that has the most cameras per mile, like anywhere in the world. With so much CCTV everywhere, everyone has a camera in their pocket. Why haven't we got one clear photo of any of these things that can be verified to a high level? We don't. Therefore, until we do, it doesn't exist. And I think I do believe that people who believe in those things, like I believe that they believe. So I'm not saying everyone is wrong because I don't know. There could be stuff out there that I don't understand. I certainly don't understand, but science hasn't caught up to those phenomenons yet. Um, but yeah, and I mean, I think having that kind of non-belief in these things makes it slightly easier for me to write about these things because I'm not fearful of repercussions of of the Loch Ness monster coming after me. If I expose him. So I think that there's something to be said for a cynic writing horror. Um, but horror's completely. Uh, most good horror films, there is some kind of suspension of disbelief in supernatural stuff. So I'm all for it, and the more people that believe in ghosts and ghouls and goblins, the more that horror movies will affect them. So I'm all for it, really.
Yeah, and this is something we're definitely gonna circle back to, because I think having that viewpoint and making Host is an interesting dynamic. But I mean,
Yeah.
before we jump ahead, I want to know, what were the first horror films and the first horror stories that you experienced?
I had a friend in primary school, so that's from the age of like 3 till 10, called Raphael, and he was the only person that was into horror films from like that age, like before 10, because he had an older brother who was obsessed with horror films. So Raphael used to sneak away VHS movies from me, and in the school playground, like I'd give him like a copy of Match magazine, which is like a football magazine that used to come out weekly, and he would lend me his brothers like Nightmare on Elm Street and Evil Dead VHS. So I watched all the classics like at very early age, like 5, 6, 7, 8, and also like my parents were very good with me watching you know 18 certificate, 15 certificate movies from a very early age. That there wasn't really any censorship there. Um, they kind of trusted me not to freak out or anything. So I watched a lot of those horror movies. So, but I think the first one, I mean, if you don't count the gateway horror movies like Gremlins and things like that, it was probably Nightmare on Elm Street one. I think that's my earliest memory of watching a proper horror movie, and I remember the videotape from Raphael's brother was an ex rental videotape as well. Um, and I was scared to watch it just because Raphael had already told me the story of Freddy Krueger, because we had to do a creative writing lesson in primary school, and he just did the storyline of Nightmare on Elm Street Part One as thinking that the teacher wouldn't know who Freddy Krueger was. Obviously, the teacher did, and Raphael got in trouble. But from that I kind of knew from a child's point of view who Freddy Krueger was. And kids in the playground talked about Freddy Krueger all the time. Not No one had seen the movie except for Raphael. So when I seen it, it was like such a formative movie for me, because it's one of the most perfect horror films of all time, and it was one of the first ones I watched. So there wasn't any possibility for me to not be a horror fan after watching that classic from a very early age. And then I think after that, I want to say it was Evil Dead 2, like in that same kind of batch of like VHS films. Um, so yeah, and Evil Dead, the Evil Dead franchise is extremely important to me, and Sam Raimi and all the work he's did made me believe that anyone can make movies, and if they have the will and a bunch of gullible friends who are willing to help. Um, so yeah, the absolute classics.
And it's interesting to bring up Evil Dead early doors because I think there's quite a parallel between your work and particularly Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 because there's an argument to be made that Evil Dead is, in some senses, one of the first found footage horror movies, and kind of Host and Evil Dead, there's a kinship, and then just the absolute all out madness of Evil Dead 2 and Dashcam, there's another parallel there.
100%. And so, do you mean in Evil Dead, like the kind of like the forced perspective of the
Right.
yeah, going through the forest? Yeah, that is like point of view, like fan footage. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you are right. Dashcam is very inspired by Evil Dead 2, and yeah, it is our Evil Dead 2 to host Evil Dead 1 for sure, and that was very intentional of us too. Um, but I'm sure we'll get onto Host and Dashcam in a bit.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, Evil Dead is extremely important. Not just to it's a very obvious answer, and it's for a good reason. It's because a lot of filmmakers growing up watching Evil Dead, that is one of the movies that inspires them to get into movies, because it looks so much fun. And just watching Sam Raimi in interviews, like he inspires you to make stuff. I'm lucky enough to have met him and hung out with him, and he mentored me for on projects and stuff. So I got to have all that amazing advice like straight into my head about specifically about the stuff that I'm doing. So and he has an amazing daughter called Emma as well, who's a filmmaker who I think is going to be as big as her dad. Like she's awesome, and she acts as well. Um, but yeah, all of those basic formative horror movies uh, kind of made me who I am. And I'm sure there were loads more, but those were the standouts. There was tons of terrible ones, but you don't want to hear about the terrible ones.
And I mean, was there a moment when you decided you wanted to write and you wanted to work in film?
I mean, I've always been a writer. When I was 7, I actually had a short story published in an like an anthology book when I was 7 years old, and I submitted it to a competition, um, and yeah, I won, and so I got into this book. And they asked me to design the front cover of the book as well. I'm a 7-year-old kid. I didn't really know what was going on, and it was a story that I did was about a dimension hopping guy who goes to all these different worlds, and one of the worlds is a vampire world. One of the worlds is like a world full of water and stuff. And I have no idea how I came up with it, but um, yeah, it was like my little first taste of horror, and like the first short story I wrote was published and went to school libraries like around the UK, and I was like, okay, cool, like that's interesting. And then I've always been decent at writing. I did the English literature degree, and did music journalism and film journalism a little bit. So I was always in and around that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, and I remember in maths class in secondary school, me and my friend Brian, I was actually in a band with briefly, we would sit at the back of the maths class, and instead of doing the lesson, we would write silly stories about our friends, like in school. They would always be kind of like parodies of existing movies, but we would just put our friends in and write. Okay, we'd watch, say for example, Nightmare on Elm Street, but what we would do if we were in Nightmare on Elm Street, and we would, use our friends and make fun of them and stuff. And that I think that kind of thing kind of stayed with me, because every time I watched a horror movie, especially in my teenage years, I would think, oh, I would probably do that a little bit different, or that was really good. I need to remember that, or oh, this movie is terrible, but the central idea is really really cool. Um, so all those things that swam around in my head, but in the UK, you're not told you can be a filmmaker. You have those school career days, and anything creative doesn't really come up. So I just didn't think it was a possibility. And then, um, being in London, you just see other people start to get into that. Make short films. I would go to like film festivals and see like friends of mine, people I know, like with short films and things like that. And I would always be like, wow, like how is this even possible? Um, so yeah, that was it. I just I'm a decent writer. I know horror, and putting the two together just kind of makes sense. But I didn't know how much that would be kind of part of my life until a bit later.
Talking about how in the UK you're never really encouraged to go into filmmaking or creative
Yeah.
disciplines. It's reminded me of something that, I'd forgotten about, but I think when we were 13 or 14, we had to do work experience, and they're asking me,
Mhm.
what do I
Yeah.
want to do? So it's all sorts of
What did you
creative
do?
things. But well, this is what I'm getting to. This is ridiculous because I wanted, anything to do with writing, whether it was journalism, whether it was publishing. And as I said, I'm living in a small town in
Mm.
Worcestershire. So then, like the career advisor person, he comes to me and he's like, "Look, we've had a look. We can't find anything that you want. So
Mhm.
how about you just go and do some work experience at the Royal Mail and be a
Oh,
postman for a few weeks?" It's like,
that would be quite interesting. I wish
so
I did
I
that at
yeah,
13.
so I did. I mean, it didn't, as you can tell, it didn't mean that I then thought, right, well, my actual mission in life is to deliver mail now.
Mhm.
But I mean, it was good in the sense that, like, I just met interesting people and had interesting conversations while we're going around in the van delivering posts. So
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
it was an all right experience. Didn't help with my writing. apart from, just meeting people, which is kind of part of the game
Hmm.
anyway. But yeah, if you want to do something creatively, you have to go and you have to seek out those opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I think about my English literature and creative writing degree, it wasn't really what I learned during the course that was helpful. It was the connections that I made. It was
Hmm.
learning to network. It was just, being surrounded by other people with interesting ideas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the uni I went to, there was no one really into horror as well, and even when we did, horror literature, like because I did English literature as well. Even when we did like something that was tangentially horror, like I would really be the only person that was kind of like really, really into it. Um, but yeah, there's no one I want to say from my uni that kind of inspired me. Well, I did one short film in uni. But though I'm not an actor by any stretch of the imagination, but I remember on my friend's course, he was doing a short film, and he asked me to be involved. I was like, cool. Like, you want me to like hold the camera? Because I knew my way around the camera a little bit. And he was, no, you have to act in it. So that was the first short film I was ever involved with. It was in uni, and I did this terrible short film where I was the love interest for this lady. I can't remember what the story was. It wasn't a horror. It was like a romantic type thing, and I was the love interest for some reason, and I must have been so awkward and terrible at it. And I hope that's been deleted now because I never want to even watch that myself. But yeah, I just remember that was the first short film I was ever involved with. That's crazy. Um, but yeah, like we said, there is no pathway to get into films, or no normal pathway as well, and I almost think that the career advisors in school, they're almost doing people a favor saying not mentioning films, because it is so hard to get films made, so hard, and the disappointment and rejection you get on a daily basis working in film is you need really tough skin. um and I've seen it break people. I really have. So you really almost need to be delusional in your confidence that what you're doing is the right thing to do and the right path to take, because it is so incredibly difficult. Um, I mean, it's not brain surgery or anything, but it's still very hard to get a single film made. It's very hard to get a short film made, never mind a feature film. But yeah, that's why like when people manage to do it, like they should be congratulated and praised, because it takes everything to make anything like that at the moment.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, how did music factor into things? Because you mentioned you were in a band, you mentioned music journalism.
Yeah.
Scroobius Pip has popped up in some of your work. So tell
Yeah.
me about how music has played a part in your life and career.
Oh, I think I originally thought I would be in music, either in a band, or working for a record label. All of my friends growing up went into the music industry, either in bands. Like some of my best mates are in like bands right now, um, or they work for big record labels, or like boutique record labels. I have worked for record labels as well. And every now and again, even now, like I'm asked, sometimes record labels ask me to help them with some creative projects. Um, like for instance, like people don't know this, but like I did a lot of work with Universal Music and Warner Music on creative projects and real weird stuff. Like pre-pandemic, I worked on a TV show with Universal Music to kind of promote their bands, and um, never got. We filmed 3 episodes and it never saw the light of day, but I thought it was really good, and I wrote every single episode. So that was a shame, but yeah, and I produced a lot of podcasts for these record labels. I was producing Cheryl Cole's podcast for a little while randomly, and some other ones too. for Warner Music and Universal Music, and I helped them build their podcast studios as well. So music. I've always been around music. My friends are all around music. I've had a couple of record labels that did pretty well. The last record label I ran did really well, but I gave it up to do film because I'm only one person. But in the back of my mind, I do think about making another record label because it's fun finding new bands and becoming obsessed with those bands and then putting it out to other people and I think I want to have a music venue one day, maybe half cinema, half music venue, because I spent a lot of time in those things.
So, what are your favorite genres, and what was the genre of the band that you were in?
Oh, let's not talk about my band. We were
Okay.
a terrible indie rock band,
Right.
terrible, terrible. But well, I've always liked rock music. And but I'm quite eclectic as well, and I know people say that, but I do like kind of random things as well. But right now, all I'm listening to really is kind of like math rock and like proggy type rock things. I've always been really into that type of thing, but I can be quite basic. My favorite band of all time is the Smiths, even though Morrissey is a complete waste of space now. But the Smiths is the band I've always gone back to, like forever and a day. And then there's like Bowie, like you can't beat Bowie. Um, I like Sabbath as well if you want to get a bit heavier. But yeah, I've just always been around band. Like I'm there's a band called Ash. I don't know if you know Ash, but they've been around for 30 years now, and I've been friends with them since I was a teenager, and I've done music videos for them and put on massive gigs for them. I put on their 20th anniversary gig myself, and multiple other kind of Star Wars themed gigs for Ash, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I've worked with them a lot, and I think I'm going to be doing some more music videos for them for the next album. But yeah, so music is a massive part of like my life, and I do think it affects my film work as well. Um, because music and film are so closely related, and it makes me like if you look at like math rock, the way that works, the kind of like change ups in time signatures and the more interesting kind of chord progressions and arpeggios. To me, a good horror film will have those change ups where it's not you're not walking down a well trod path. You're doing something a bit subversive that people don't expect, like a cool math rock band or a cool prog band, um, and yeah, and there's so many there's so many really cool British ones that have been around for ages. Like I love 65 Days of Static a lot. They're a great band, and I think they kind of popularized the kind of mathy sound in the UK over the last like 20 years. Um, but yeah, in answer to your question, music is like super important, and yeah, they're my favorite genre. So you said you're a big metal guy.
Yeah, I mean, heavy metal is definitely my first love, but then
Hmm.
my music taste is also eclectic. I mean, I think when you get really passionate about one genre, then you start looking into others. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned Scroobius Pip. I love all the kind of hip hop of that era, like B. Dolan and Sage
Oh
Francis,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
just because like lyrically it's so smart as well.
yeah.
Um,
And Pip's
and
the
then
nicest guy in the world as well. That's why
right,
me and him are gonna like hopefully work together like on a whole bunch of things. I've been on his podcast a bunch of times.
yeah,
Just a real nice guy to go for a pint with as well.
yeah.
Um,
That, I mean
yeah.
that. Yeah, I've never met him, but that's certainly how he comes across. And yeah, just really humble for someone who's
Oh
achieved
yeah.
so
Yeah.
much as
You know
well.
what? He is so humble because he wrote a script a couple of years back. He sent it to me, and I was like, I'll read it over the next week. And people say that, but like, I read the first couple of pages, and I just kept going. So I read it like overnight, and I think at like 4 a.m. I texted him and I was like, Pip, this is incredible. Like, so he's written this amazing film, like genuinely blew me away, and this is the thing, like he's having trouble getting it made, and I'm like, this is one of the best scripts I've ever read. It's so different and strange, and it's really self-deprecating and original, and he's got loads of cool people who want to be in it as well, but he just can't find the funding. It's really hard. Um, so that's the thing. Like, I think if we all lived in America, that film would be made by now because it would be
Yeah.
an A24 movie. So hopefully that film gets made. I really, really hope so because, yeah, I think he would be a great director as well.
Yeah, I think it's getting tougher and tougher to make films to get the funding to get people on board at the moment. It's
Almost impossible, especially for horror as well. It's
yeah.
really hard in the UK.
Is it a horror film then that Pip has written?
No, I mean there are horrific elements. I wouldn't say it's a horror film. I would say it is a drama, but
Mm,
a very unique meta drama. Again, I don't want to spoil it in case the film is made. I'm sure it will be at some point, but like the first half of the film is completely different from the second half of the film, and it just is so clever. I'm so impressed by it. So yeah, I want to say, man, so if anyone's listening to this that wants to fund a really cool original movie from the UK with loads of like top level stars as well who want to be in it, then yeah, hit me up.
yeah. I mean, that should be everyone who's, in a position to do that. Imagine hearing that pitch and you're like, no, I'm not interested in that.
Well, the problem with the UK is we there's a lot of snobbery around horror in the UK because we want to see ourselves, British people, we want to see ourselves as holier than thou, and we're encouraged to watch like these prestige bodice rippers or big ensemble costume dramas or or alternatively these kitchen sink poverty porn movies where we can feel good about ourselves that we're not in the same predicament as a protagonist, but that's not fun. In the box office, at the box office, the films that make the most money and are seen the most and give people the most enjoyment are horror movies and action films, but we don't make them in this country really. So it blows my mind that people who hold the purse strings in this country, and whose whole job it is to enrich the British film industry, are using public money to make films for niche audiences. They're not making movies that will be popular. They're not making movies that people will want to go and see. They make these overblown uh, ensemble movies with the same people in it and again and again and again, and on a topic that no one wants to watch, and no one does watch it. It does well at the London Film Festival. It does well, maybe at Cannes or whatever, but doesn't equal putting money back into the coffers of the British film industry. And that's the problem we've got now because we are too snobby in this country to actually take a step back and say, what do actually people want to see in this country? What will give people the best escapism and the best entertainment? Maybe we should put our money towards that. But that will never happen in this country because the people who hold the purse strings, who are at the top, do not want to see that. And do you know why? It's because they want to win awards. And historically, horror hasn't really won awards. So they only make movies that for them, for their friends, and for themselves to win awards. So they can put it on their mantelpiece and say, look, I've done my job and justify, getting paid. But and it won't change until every single one of them is kicked out and replaced by people who actually want to help the British film industry. And it's a shame. This is my soapbox. I'm always on, by the way. But like the people are scared to talk out about the British film industry in general because they think they'll be blacklisted, blackballed if you say anything about it, or you won't get funding from it. But I think if the more people that put their head in the sand, the more our film industry will be destroyed, because most of the films that get made in this country aren't British movies. They're American movies. They're big studios and American movies. If you go to any big studio in the UK, it's packed out full of American movies, um, which is a real shame. The original British, horror movies just don't really happen, or they happen on such a small scale. Like, people have to fund it themselves, blow up their credit cards. It's a real shame. But I think the more people talk about it, and the more people are brave enough to kind of, stand up and talk about it, then I think something will be done.
Yeah, and I mean, this is presumably too why, Host, which you became really known for, which really kind of helped blow up your profile, that was set up not through any studio, but through a group chat that you had during lockdown. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So pre-lockdown, me and Rob Savage, we'd been making short films for about 10 years and making little video projects, and the short films have been going really well. Got into festivals, gone to Sundance, London Film Festival, the big one. So we'd kind of done all that stuff, and but we made a short film called Salt, starring Alice Lowe and Bo Gadsden as her daughter, and that really opened the doors to things, because it was only 2 minutes long, and it made the studios in Hollywood look at us and think, oh, these guys, they kind of know what they're doing. Like, they're able to craft a really cool short story in such a short space of time. So we made that, and we got all we did the water bottle tour of Hollywood, and had loads of meetings and signed loads of deals with all these studios for films that probably would never be seen. Um, but like, one of the kind of things we did was, we, through Soul, we met with Sam Raimi and his team at Remy Productions, and we started batting around ideas, and I came up with an idea that we were going to make with Sam Raimi, and so we started developing that, and apparently it was the first time that Sam Raimi's ever greenlit a movie in the room, based on the pitch in the room, like, straight away, which was cool, because it was an idea I'd come up with within 24 hours, and just and like, they were into it. So we were in the middle of that, and then the lockdown hit. And at first we thought it would only be a couple of weeks, which it started to go longer. So we realised, oh, that all the momentum's gone from, like, Soul and our other short films, and the momentum's gone out of the Sam Raimi movie. So we were a little bit down about that. So anyway, we started a group chat called the Quarantine Movie Club, to kind of connect with our friends. So I think altogether there's maybe like 17, 20 people in this group chat, just friends, mostly friends who work in film. Who were we had actors, we had stunt people, a producer, um, a VFX person, you know, writer, director. We had all that in there. So we started off using that WhatsApp group to schedule watching films on Zoom every night. So we just watched a ton of films, and every morning I'd wake up and make a poster, because we had nothing to do, make a poster for the film that we were going to watch that night and send it around to the group chat. Okay, today we're going to watch this. And it was a time when there was a thing called Netflix Party, when you could watch a movie and then chat along with a movie with your friends on, like, a chat thing. So we did that every single day, sometimes twice a day. And then we did pub quizzes, like, on Zoom, not like everyone did. It was real fun. But then it got into about a month in, and we'd kind of run out of movies to watch now, or movies we all wanted to watch. So it started to kind of slow down a little bit. And then Rob called me and said he's got an idea to prank our friends. And I was like, cool, okay, show me. And he showed me him, and this is all on Zoom, by the way. He showed me him climbing up a ladder to his attic, going into his attic, and then something jumps out, and then he falls down the ladder and dies. And I was like, this is actually terrible. This is, like, no one's going to fall for this. They're not going to fall for this. Like, rethink this idea. And, so he tried it a few times and like called me up and said, what about this? And it was starting to get better, but I was like, they're never going to believe it. So anyway, it was time to prank our friends. So we told our friends in the quarantine movie club chat, okay, everyone jump on Zoom. And for some reason, there was one day that like no one was available. So I remember like I had to like call Gemma about 6 times. It's like, Gem, you really should come onto Zoom. She was like, why? I was like, oh no, like we're going to talk about something. And she's like, but I'm busy, and I'm just like, just as a favor, jump just 5 minutes, jump on Zoom. So she was like pissed off at me, and then everyone else, like not everyone from our group chat went in that Zoom, um, but there were all the cast of Host were there, which is why they're in it, and a couple of other friends were there, and Kate Herron, who's the director of Loki and writing the new Sims movie, she was there as well. Obviously, she didn't make it into Host. Um, but yeah, we did this prank, and just before everyone jumped on Zoom, I said to Rob, "Shall I record this?" And he was like, "Yeah, okay." So like, I pressed record. I think it was the first time I'd ever recorded something on Zoom. He did the prank, and they fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And it was funny as hell, And so and we were like, "Cool, that's it." So I sent the footage, which was about 10 minutes long, to Rob, and he edited it into a 2 minute summary of it basically, and put that on his social media on Twitter. And within 24 hours, it had blown up, and it was on all these news sites, Lad Bible, all across the world, and it had 18 million views in 2 days. And we were like, "What is going on?" Because obviously we'd made short form content before, and this is like was zero budget. Did it with our friends, did it on Zoom, and it was blown up more than anything we'd ever done. And then we started getting calls from studios and production companies, like, "We saw your short film. Okay, well, do you have the feature idea?" And obviously, to us, it wasn't a short film; it was a silly video. So, and this is what I say to everyone: if someone asks you if you've got something, you say yes, and then work out the details later. So Rob was asked, "Do you have a feature film idea?" And he's like, "Yeah, we've got one, we've got one." Then he calls me in a panic. "Okay, Jed, come up with," because how it works was I would always come up with the original idea for all of our shorts, for Host, Dashcam, and all that, and then bring it to Rob. Um, so it was like, I can't think of a way we can make this into a feature film, but let me sleep in it. So, you know, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, or I think it was like 4:35 in the morning, and I've still got the text, and that text is in a bunch of like horror books as well now. It's like almost like horror history. But I just texted him 2 words, and all it said was Zoom seance, and then I fell asleep, and then the next morning he was like, "Fuck, this is it, Zoom seance," and that's what we pitched around. We had all these meetings. All we said is, all we know is it's a Zoom seance. We're going to shoot it on Zoom, and we're going to use our friends. And we don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know how short it's going to be, but we want it to be made in lockdown and to come out before lockdown ends. And at the time, Boris Johnson had said that lockdown would end on August 1st. So we were like, it has to be out before August 1st. But that was, at the time, I think that was like 10 weeks away or 8 weeks away or something. Um, so everyone who was very interested, but they wanted to make it after lockdown. Um, but Shudder were the only people who were like, "Yeah, have the money, have this." And I mean, it was a tiny little bit of money, so it was no skin off their nose. They were just like, we haven't got any movies being made. We'll leave you alone. Just make the thing." And yeah, we were pretty much left alone to our own devices. So uh, we made it. We put it out on July 30th or July 31st, and yeah, it blew up straight away. So it was insane. We couldn't believe it.
Oh, it's incredible. And who would have thought that bloody Boris Johnson effectively gave you a, a deadline and made your life harder? But I love that you
Yeah,
literally did it a day before his,
yeah.
you
We
know.
only delivered it to Shudder, I think, on the 29th of July. So like we only and that was the day that we had our casting crew screen, which was a Zoom screen, of course, because we didn't know what we had because it was chopping and changing. Like in the day before that, I had to fix Emma's sound because she had for like a whole bunch of her filming. For some reason, her mic corrupted and all the sound files were scattered all over the place. So genuinely, I had to spend 24 hours fixing the sound because for some reason no one else wanted to do it. And Emma was my friend. I brought Emma to the group, so I felt responsible. So I spent 24 hours, like on the 27th or 28th of July, fixing Emma's sound, and yeah, it worked out, and we realized when we watched it the day before it dropped on Shudder, we were like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, this is really interesting. Like, scarier than I thought. But all we wanted is something that we could point to show people, like we were being creative in lockdown. We didn't know, the incredible roller coaster it would take us on.
So I have a load of things that I have to ask about
Please,
now. So I
please
mean,
do.
with that initial prank, you said that everyone fell for it, even though you had anticipated they wouldn't. So
Yeah.
how far did it go? What kind of reactions were you getting? And at what point did you reveal that Rob was in fact not dead?
So the prank again, it was he would hear a noise upstairs in his attic, and so he'd climb up the ladder, and everyone was watching, and they were like, Rob, don't go up there, like, why are you going up there? And then he goes up, and he looks around, but he's moving his laptop so we could see. He's like, can you guys see anything? And then something jumps out, which was a carefully installed bit of Wreck, the film Wreck, like it was a seamless transition into Wreck, and then back to him falling down the ladder and on the floor, and it's perfectly placed so you'd see the camera placed on his head, and because he didn't move for ages, people were like, what's going on? And I remember Gemma's like, we should call an ambulance, but like Kate Herron was like, Rob, are you okay, Rob? And I had to keep going off camera because I was cracking up so much because I was like, this is silly. But they all fall for it, and they were like scared, and everyone was texting, is this real? Is this real? Um, but that was really the genesis of that group dynamic you see in Host, like, and how we realized, oh, we can use our friends because they would work, because if they're reacting to this like this, it would work. Or if even scarier things happened, then they were the protagonists. Um, so yeah, but then after a little while, after about 10 minutes of Rob lying down, then he got up, and but the reaction wasn't like, oh my god, that was amazing. They were just like, what the hell? Like, they were kind of pissed off. So when we told them we were making a feature film of it, I think they just didn't believe it, or they just thought it would be another kind of like random thing that would just drop on YouTube. Um, yeah, because we didn't know what we were making at this time.
And then for the writing itself, what did that look like? Because I understand there were three of you writing it, but
Yes,
at the same time, it's almost, I have to imagine some of it is a little bit organic. So this is
yeah,
not a normal script.
yeah. What's called a scriptment, which is kind of what they did for the Blair Witch Project. In fact, like, we stole a lot of stuff from the Blair Witch Project, in terms of like kind of the structure, the scriptment idea, and using their real names and things like that. Yeah, so me, Gemma, and Rob, we got together. Actually, it was me and Rob first, and we basically plotted out all of the kills first, which is kind of a strange way to do things. But we basically went onto the Zoom.com website, and it had a list of their features. So we were like, okay, Zoom can do this, 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 this. Okay, and these are all the kills. And then I think we just put the actor's name next to each of the Zoom features and tried to figure out a way that that's how they would die. And then because all day, every day, me and Rob would talk about horror movies and kills. So we had an absolute jukebox of kills that we wanted to try, and that we hadn't used in our shorts yet. So we had all the kills, we had all the uh, all the setups for the kills and what we wanted to do. And then we brought on Gemma, who's an amazing writer. This isn't Gemma Moore, it's Gemma Hurley, the writer Gemma Hurley, and she really added some of the heart to everything, because and when you have two horror fanatics like me and Rob, you need someone to rein us in a little bit. You need someone to be the referee a little bit, and she did that amazingly, and we were a really good team. We worked really fast. We wrote. I think it took about a week, and that was it. Um, and at least for the first draft, but we did a lot of research and planning. So we did multiple seances, like real life Zoom seances with real psychics. Um, who had never done Zoom seances. So we kind of invented the Zoom seances, I want to say, because all the psychics we spoke to had never done it before. So yeah, we would record those Zoom seances with real psychics, and then we would look at them and plan. Okay, this is how this works. This is the terminology that a psychic would use. Um, and then what we did is some we did a test seance with the cast, and it really informed us of basically how to write it and how the group dynamics would work in a seance situation. Because originally we had Gemma and Haley's characters swapped around. Like Haley was more the kind of mischievous one, and Gemma was the more serious one, because that's kind of how we thought they were in our friendship group. But doing the real seance, we realized it was the other way around. Haley was the more serious one, taking it seriously, and Gemma was the more playful one. So we were like, okay, this is really, really interesting. And then in that real seance we did, something happened behind Gemma, like something flew off her shelf. And again, as you know, I'm a cynic, but we have that on the Blu-ray actually, like as an extra. Something flies off or something falls down behind Gemma, and then she goes crazy. And we were like, I remember texting Rob, "This is gold. This is absolute gold." So we kind of knew that this kind of format would work, and so we for the psychic we hired an actor, and we told the cast that this was a real psychic, again another real psychic. So they never knew she was an actor, even though she plays Doctor Who's mum in Doctor Who. They didn't know that. So yeah, we try to keep it as real as possible, and the girl should really have a writing credit on it as well, because a lot of the best lines are improvised, like for sure. Like "Happy Spookies," which was kind of like the kind of catchphrase out of it. That was just all Emma, and because I remember watching like some of the kind of dailies, and I was like, "Emma, when you say Happy Spookies and everyone says Happy Spookies, that's really good." And she was like, "What's Happy Spookies?" It's like you say it in this one scene where you're taking a drink, and she's like, "No, I don't." I was like, "Emma, I'm watching it right now. You say Happy Spookies," because the way like found footage is filmed, like you film a million things and then you pick out the best bits. So she couldn't remember saying "Happy Spookies," and but yeah, it worked out really well. And with scriptments, how it works is like you have the whole thing planned out, and you have suggestions for what they do. You have suggestions for certain lines, because you need certain dialogue cemented in there, because you need to tell a coherent story as well. But between those lines, you can improv, you can throw suggestions at them and they'll come back. And yeah, and with any good movie, like the actual good movie is found in the edit, and we had an amazing editor called Brenner who edited it to within an inch of its life, and we had permission from Zoom to use their assets as well, which adds to the authenticity. And we just asked them, Zoom was new to all of us, and we just said, "Hey, we're going to make a horror movie using Zoom. Is that okay?" And they were like, "Yeah." And they sent us a file with all the assets, all the grid, and how it all works. And they were really into it. So yeah, it's the writing process was very easy, because it was with friends, and we have like decades of horror in our brains, so it was relatively easy. And it felt very free in writing like that as well. And yeah, and we obviously couldn't do it in person, so we wrote over Zoom as well. And we actually wrote it. We didn't write it in final draft, because I think Rob didn't have final draft. So we wrote it in Google Docs. We wrote Host in Google Docs. because you can have the collaborative feature in it, um, which is crazy to think of now. But yeah, then obviously we did transfer it to Final Draft like once it was done, but originally it was Google Docs.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, in terms of, belief, what was the belief of other people? You said that you're a skeptic, but it'd be interesting to know, were there a lot of people within the filmmaking process that
Yeah,
actually did have beliefs?
yeah. All of the cast, at least the women on the cast, they believed, and because like spooky, and a lot of people say spooky things happen on set, but genuinely, like things did happen on set, and Emma specifically was extremely scared of Host and the story we're weaving. And she started seeing things in the house for real, and genuinely, what would happen is she would finish filming. She would text me like, "Jed, I'm really scared. Something happened. Like I'm seeing stuff." And so I would, until like for a long time, I would have to stay up with her, on the phone, until the sun came up, and then she'd be like, "I can go to sleep now." So we would just talk about nonsense all night until the sun came up, and then she would feel she was safe because the sun's up, and then she would sleep during, for a little bit during the day until she had to like film the rest of the Host. Um, but yeah, that happened for a while, and then I sent her some sage to kind of sage her house and things like that. But yeah, weird things would happen to Emma. She would literally see like a scary guy standing in the middle of her room. Um, yeah, and like I said, she had a lot of technical issues as well. But I mean, that could just be the technology. But you know, maybe it's something else. Who knows?
Do you know, was there a point when she kind of got over that and things got back to normal? I presume you're not still to this day, I have
No,
to call her
no,
up.
no. I think she's fine. Um, though, yeah, she is a big believer. But it was a yeah. I think after she kind of when Host blew up, you kind of see it from a different perspective. It isn't just like a little niche movie that's like cursed. It's a kind of a global phenomenon almost. And when she was doing interviews on like you know on American news channels and American TV shows, that made her kind of put Host in perspective a little bit more. Like it's entertainment.
Yeah, and in terms of, having that real life seance, I
Mhm.
mean, what was how long did it go on for to begin with? And did was there anyone, I mean, perhaps Emma, who was like, I think we should pull out. I think we shouldn't do this. This is too much.
Yeah, there were a couple of the cast who were very, they didn't really want to do the seance. Um, there is actually, yeah, it was Emma. There was a time and this was after we made Host, but it was like within a week after releasing Host, a news publication wanted to do a seance with us, and Emma just noped out of it. Like she appeared on screen for like a minute, and then she was visibly upset. So we were like, Emma, like, you don't have to do this. So yeah, then so she went off. So and that's on the Blu-ray as well, by the way. The Blu-ray from Second Sight. I think it was a seance we did with Bloody Disgusting, I want to say. But Emma appears briefly and then just disappears because she didn't want to do any more seances because she was really scared. Um, but yeah, I think in general they didn't want to mess with supernatural stuff in general, and yeah, so that's something that we obviously saw, and you could see some of the reactions they have on screen. Like some of it is maybe genuine fear. I don't know. Obviously, it's a controlled environment. They know it's fiction, but you can't help it if like spooky things are happening around you, like, and you see your friends because sometimes we didn't tell them what was going to happen on other people's screens, so they were witnessing some of the things happening like behind other people for the first time. Um, so, for example, when Emma saw Teddy die and get set on fire, she did not expect him to set on fire at all because it's a small found footage from how can people be set on fire? How can Ginny float up in the air above a pool and crack her neck and fall down? You don't really see that type of thing in like low budget British found footage movies. So because we really and they were Emma was witnessing that for the first time as well. All that big long sequence. So um, her reaction in that is relatively real. Obviously, she knows it's a film. Obviously, she had people in her ear, and she knows no one was dead. But seeing something for the first time, that getting that genuine reaction is always really interesting. But there is a fine line in getting a genuine reaction and actually being Kubrickian, like and using not using the actor's actual acting skill, like just using like the natural reactions. But I think we walk that line really well. And Emma's acting in the kind of third act is so good, so good. The way like she's crying and sniffing, but under her sheets and stuff, like it's amazing. But we had to we took them to horror school basically. We gave them all of the horror movies they need to watch in order to kind of get the vibe of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, listening to you talk about it, there had to be a kind of fine line, I suppose, between, trying to get an authentic reaction, but equally wanting to kind of safeguard, wanting to make sure that you're not accidentally traumatizing, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And obviously they're smart, incredible actors as well. So we just had we had faith in them to be able to pull this off. And like I say, all of them should have had a writing credit, producing credits even, because they did a lot of the things themselves as well. All the stunts they did a lot themselves, makeup, sound, lighting, recording, uploading the audio and the video like afterwards as well. They did a lot of that themselves. Set dressing, like incredible. Like, so we couldn't have done it without them.
So, for those who are really familiar with found footage and horror history, they might notice that the Zoom code in Host is connected to Ghostwatch. And
Yeah,
I love that Easter egg. I love that you've also got in Flashback a Return to Oz play. So
yes.
it's part of your filmmaking repertoire to include at least a few homages even in all of your films.
No, I don't think it's intentional. Well, obviously it is intentional, but I think that's just the kind of stuff I want to do, and like I wear my influences on my sleeve. So for for Host, like there's we pay homage to a whole bunch of things, but Ghostwatch is a massive influence. I'm on the Ghostwatch documentary on the Blu-ray as well for Ghostwatch because I love it so much, and I know I know a disproportionate amount about Ghostwatch, and like I've hung out with Leslie Manning and Stephen Volk, the director and the writer, a bunch of times now, and you know they thankfully never get tired of me asking them questions about Ghostwatch. I've interviewed them for things in the past as well, and I'm very obsessed with Ghostwatch because it's very influential in found footage, and I think a lot of Americans are now starting to, because it was unavailable in America for the longest time, but now Shudder has it mostly, and people are doing screens of it. Um, and obviously Host, like we have a couple of the camera moves owe a lot to Ghostwatch. So yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned the return to us thing in Flashback, because a lot of people, because it happened so fast, a lot of people don't realize it. But I thought because like it's a Netflix original, so I thought, okay, like this is so unnecessary, but Netflix are paying for this, so I'm gonna have one little bit where it flashes back to very briefly to a school play with that was returned to Oz for some reason, and then all the kids dressed up like TikTok and Dorothy and the Wheelers and stuff. And it's funny, and in the front row, that was meant to be the parents, they're Netflix execs, like in the audience as well, because they were there on set, and I was just like, oh, you might as well be in it. But yeah, it was really fun, and I have a costume designer and makeup artist I use on absolutely everything. So they did amazing work, on these kids. So yeah, but I wear my heart on my sleeve, and my references are just out there to see, and they're quite obvious. And Return to Oz it's a real gateway horror. It's one of those things that get people into horror. And I love that movie so much. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I, of course, to begin with, saw The Wizard of Oz, but then, the next step is watch The Return to Oz, and
yep,
holy shit, it like just
hmm
it excited me in a way for kind of horror and monsters and just the surrealness that I don't even think I was aware of at the
oh yeah,
time, and it totally holds up
it
today.
does. It really, really does, and it's still scary. And like the practical effects are so good as well. And Fritza Bulk as Dorothy is incredible. The pumpkin head, and it's all so good. And the kind of stop motion claymation effects on some of it as well with the gnome king is so good. And to this day, like it doesn't even need to be anyone else around me. Every time I see something green, I touch it and say Oz, like they do in the film. Like genuinely, like you'll see me if you see me walking down the street. There's something green, I will touch it and say Oz. But it's like I'm out of habit now. I just can't help it.
Yeah, no, I'd love for them to, put it back on the big screen. I want that cinematic experience. I've never
Yeah.
seen it at the cinema.
Really? Well, that's the beauty of being in London because
Yeah.
the Prince Charles Cinema like shows it
Ah, the
sometimes, and
Prince Charles is so good. Like,
yeah,
when I was living in London, I would get there as often as
yeah,
possible because there were so many obscure things, and there were,
hmm
premieres, or I guess exclusive showings of horror movies, like independent horror movies that you weren't
yeah.
getting anywhere else.
We had a screening of Flashback at the Prince Charles Cinema, and they put my name on the marquee outside, and that was. It'd been up there for like a couple of days, and like I hadn't realized 'cause I hadn't checked my social media as well. So my social media, and everyone's atting me into pictures of them with my name on the marquee, and I was like, oh my god, why didn't anyone just call me and tell me? 'Cause I didn't know they were going to do it. And yeah, so I love the Prince Charles. There's another new kind of indie cinema that's opened in London called the Nickel, and it shows kind of like almost like grindhousey type movies, really obscure, more obscure than the Prince Charles. It's a 50-seater as well. They have like VHS there. They have a bar downstairs. Opened I think October last year, so it's relatively new. But the Nickel in London is really cool as well. You'll see some real obscure horror movies in that place. Love it.
Yeah, I haven't been back to the UK since it opened. So then, yeah, the
Mhm.
next time I'm in the UK, whatever's on, I'm gonna go and see
Oh
it.
yeah, and they do really cool double bills as well of just the most bizarre movies. Great place, great place.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, going back to Ghost Watch, I mean, I feel we've had some really defining moments in the found footage subgenre, and I mean that would be Ghost Watch in '92, the
Yeah,
Blair Witch Project in '99.
hmm
I think Paranormal
yeah,
Activity in 2007, and now Host in 2020.
yeah.
Little
I would put
sidebar that
I
I
would put
love
Wreck in
Lake.
between that as well. I'd put Wreck in between
Okay,
that as well.
Wreck,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I love Lake Mungo, but I
Love that
recognize that
movie.
unfortunately it's not quite tapped into the overall kind of mainstream
Yeah, it's
zeitgeist.
it's a
So
bit
that,
of a slow burn, but it's an incredible movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So to have Host in that conversation and to have been brought up on things like Ghostwatch and the Blair Witch Project, I mean, what is that like for you? And did I mean, I guess from what you were saying before, you probably didn't anticipate that because you thought you were just putting something fun together.
Yeah, but like Jenny, horror movies have been and horror literature has been part of my life since such an early age. And I think, it's a 10,000 hours thing. If you put that much passion into something, eventually it's going to pay off. I do truly believe it. And I spent so much time dissecting horror movies with my friends, going to horror movies, going to like video shops and asking them for their list. Remember, video shops used to have like a special list. You just go in and go, "Can I see the list?" And they would bring out a list underneath the counter of all like the crazy horror movies they had that they've imported from around the world. You know, I used to love that stuff, and I, I mean, it's extremely humbling and unbelievable, really, that Host is in that conversation, and I still can't believe it. It's still very recent to me. I still can't believe it, and it's one of the highest rated, not just horror movies, but movies of all time on Rotten Tomatoes. They in December, I think it was, they named it the seventh best horror movie of all time. And it's every year it's either first or second and scariest movie of all time as well on those lists, and it just absolutely blows my mind because I didn't expect it, and you don't expect it from some British guys from and yeah, we don't have too many movies in that conversation from over here. Um, so yeah, it's crazy. It's hard to describe. I remember it was maybe like a week after Host came out, um, and me and Rob and the bubbles were open again because Boris Johnson had let us out for a little while until the next lockdown. But I remember 'cause me and Rob lived on the same road, so we'd hang out every day basically, and we went to our local Greasy Spoon cafe. This is a week after Host came out, and we were there eating egg and chips with the TV on, and we looked up, and there's us on ITV primetime news, being interviewed because there's a delay in they record it in advance basically by a little bit. So we just done the interview with ITV news, like 6 o'clock news, then went to this cafe and sat there just to talk, and then we see ourselves on this big screen, and everyone in the cafe is looking at us like, oh, and we were just like, this is so strange. This is so weird. And then we did like interviews for the BBC and stuff, and it would just people came out of the woodwork and were just, oh my god, just saw you on TV, like what the hell. Um, and in that Host letter everything really, and and those films you mentioned, I'm genuinely friends with most of those people who made those movies now. Eduardo Sanchez, who wrote and directed the Blair Witch Project, I went to dinner with his family 2 weeks ago. And I've been to his house, and took a tour of his Star Wars toys, and we've hung out in the woods together making stick men and stuff. It's crazy. And the same with the Ghostwatch guys. I've had dinner with them multiple times now, and yeah, it's insane. And it really, sometimes I forget the influence Host has had on British film, and also just horror in general, because like the Blair Witch Project, after the Blair Witch Project, there were a lot of kind of copycat found footage films that came out, and Host, there's a lot of movies very similar to Host that came out straight after, and still now actually. But I kind of enjoy them because it's flattering. So yeah, it's very interesting seeing people try and capture what we did with Host, and it just proves how difficult it is and how well everyone involved did with Host, especially the cast, because that friendship dynamic cannot be replicated, and people have tried. But the thing is, they were real friends. So yeah, it's crazy to me. I don't quite understand what's going on.
And I mean, I haven't asked, but how did the Blumhouse deal come about?
Host basically because you know blew up straight away, like literally day one, the same day it was released. I remember reading, I think it was Bloody Disgusting, or Dread Central, one of them. They posted, "This is the scariest movie of the decade." Not scariest movie of the year, scariest movie of the decade. And we were like, well, our hosts, like, because we didn't see it like that, and we were like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Then all the interviews requests started coming in, like literally 20 a day. We were like, what is going on? And then we get all the TV requests, all the radio interview requests, and we were like, this is something. And then just universally, just all the reviews started coming in, and they were just like 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5, and for the longest time we were 100% on Rotten Tomatoes until I think maybe just like last year, and it dropped down to like 99 or whatever it is now. Um, but yeah, it's insane to me. But yeah, sorry for the Blumhouse thing. So because they're good at what they do, Blumhouse, and they find up and coming filmmakers. So we were on their radar before Host. We'd had a bunch of means with Blumhouse to see if anything clicked for 2 or 3 years before Host, but because of Host, they already knew who we were, so they were like, "Okay, we want you to come and do some stuff with us." And yeah, that's how it works. That's kind of how it works for everyone. You make one film, and then Blumhouse comes calling, basically. If anyone liked the first one, but yeah, it was simple as that. Really, really simple.
And so then a year later, you released Dashcam. So
Mhm.
for those unfamiliar, what is the elevator pitch for Dashcam?
Dashcam is about a woman who live streams from herself rapping from a car, and she does this in LA, but she wants to get away from everything in LA, from politics and COVID stuff. So she comes to the UK to see her old bandmate Stretch, who she was in a band with, and she proceeds to make his life a living hell, just being a complete crazy person. And steals his car and picks up a is paid to pick up a woman, and she thinks this is just an Uber ride, but the woman turns out she's possessed, basically. Um, yeah, and that's basically what it was. And after Host, we could pitch anything, and it would get made, really. So, but we had the idea for Dashcam before Host, and I think we'd already pitched it to Blumhouse, and they passed. I want to say that. And then afterwards, they were like, no, 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 come back. We'll do Dashcam. Um, but yeah, like Dashcam is so. Annie Hardy, who's the lead in Dashcam, she really does do that in real life. She drives around rapping in her car on live stream. And I've been friends with her for like 10 years at least. Um, like I said, she was in a band called Giant Drag. They were pretty big. Played Coachella and played all over the place. She was named Enemy's top 50 coolest people in the world. A few years back. So I've been friends with her for a while, and I've been in her car when she always drives me around LA. Stayed at her house, and I've been there when she's doing her band car thing. People write suggestions on the chat, and she drives around and she raps to it. These funny rhymes are always like blue. Um, I was like, Annie, I can see this being a movie. So yeah, I just pitched it to Rob. I was like, I got this idea for a horror movie. This lady called Annie Hardy drives around. She picks up a hitchhiker, or she picks up someone, and that person's possessed, and then she has to deal with that. That was kind of the elevator pitch, and sent Rob a whole bunch of Annie's videos. Jumped on Zoom, spoke to her, and yeah, we wanted to do the same thing as Host, so we wanted it to be as real as possible, but with absolutely fantastical elements because we had a much bigger budget, so we knew we could, throw the kitchen sink at it. And yeah, but we still had, it was the second lockdown, so we couldn't go to LA. So we, because the whole thing was going to be set in LA, but we couldn't do that because of lockdown. We weren't allowed in America, so we got Annie to come to the UK, and because that was a lot easier. And yeah, we shot it around Margate and parts of Kent and Norwich, sorry, Norfolk. Yeah, and we made this crazy movie, and our whole thing was, we wanted it to be almost like the anti-host, an antidote to Host, um, and to try and inject some actual horror back into horror movies, and yeah, we I think we achieved making a movie that is unlike anything else that has come out of the UK.
No, I think that's an accurate statement. And
Yeah,
I mean, while Host goes all out in the final 10 minutes, Dashcam is all out within the first 10 minutes and then it just never stops.
yeah.
And I mean, so it almost feels like they're in the same universe and Dashcam is a continuation of the madness of Host.
Yeah, I mean, that was our first plan. Our first plan was for it to be set genuinely at the same time as Host, and I guess it technically is because it's like, lockdown times. Yeah, there is obviously a crossover because Gemma's in it, and Gemma's called Gemma in it. Um, and we do. You have to kind of watch with a fine tooth comb because there are a lot of references to Host in it as well. Lots of crossovers in the chat. You see people talking about, like, did you hear about those girls on Zoom who died and all that kind of stuff. And so there is like a lot of crossover. Um, so especially because like Salen from Host is the woman that pays Annie to take the possessed person. So that has that crossover as well. And actually, Rob put Salen in Boogeyman as well as a psychic. So I guess that there's even even more extended universe there. Um, but there is, yeah, it's an absolutely insane movie, and I think as time goes on, more and more people are discovering it, and yeah, it fills me with joy that people have watched this crazy movie, uh, yeah, that we made in the second lockdown.
Yeah, yeah. And much like Host, this was co-written again with Rob Savage and Gemma Hurley.
Hmm.
What did the co-writing process look like? And I mean, was it a case of one of you taking an initial pass, or were you writing this in real time? I know that you said that
Yeah,
you had the idea to begin with, but I wonder what the logistics look like.
yeah, we were a little bit more professional on this time, even though we wrote it literally a month after Host came out. We wrote it in like August, September, and Host had come out on July 31st. So it was like immediately after Host. But I had become friends with the people at Final Draft, and so I think I got Rob Final Draft and maybe an update for Gemma. But anyway, they had in the new version of Final Draft, they finally fixed their collaborative feature because it's been terrible for years in Final Draft. Like, it always crashes. But yeah, we used the collaborative feature in Final Draft, so we basically all had the script in front of us, and we would just like type away suggestions and just fill it out as we went along. Very similar process to Host, really. Um, a collaborative document, just filling in things. But I would say with Dashcam, there was a lot more. It was a much bigger document than the one we had for Host because so much happens. So it was a little bit more planned. And but still, I would say it took us, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks maximum to write it. Um, and yeah, what you see on screen is pretty much almost exactly what we wrote. So obviously, Annie, you can't predict sometimes what she's going to say, and there's improv element with any fan footage film. But it's pretty faithful to what we originally wrote. Besides a couple of things towards the end, but um, yeah, it's fun to work that way because like we, and again, I think because it happened so fast, we want to do another fast movie. Um, we didn't really think too much about doing multiple drafts. Like I think I, I want to say maximum we did like two drafts, three drafts, maybe. Um, and then yeah, and then we made it, and then released it the next year because the
And
post
what?
and that one took a little
Yeah,
bit longer because of all there's a million VFX and stunts in it, like but crazy stuff. But again, like it was made up of a lot of the kind of horror set pieces that you know me and Rob had in mind for the longest time, and we wanted to put on film.
and of course with Annie Hardy, there's a real energy about her and a certain amount of unpredictability. So, what was it like working with her?
Annie's awesome. I think she rubs people up the wrong way, and I can understand why. Because sometimes she has no filter, and we live in a world where that is not necessarily enjoyed by a lot of people, and I can completely understand that. Sometimes she's her own worst enemy, but Annie is honestly she's a lovely person. Um, and so what we did with Dashcam is we wanted to show people what it would be like if someone who has slightly different views from you is the protagonist of a horror film. The horror audience is very left leaning. So we were like, the real horror here is you're empathizing with a character that doesn't isn't like the normal horror movie protagonist. And I think in general, people seem to have a problem with problematic women as protagonists. If it was a man, they would have an Oscar, but because it's a woman, people have a problem with that. Um, and so yeah, she got a lot of she got a lot of hate. She gets a lot of love too, but she got a lot of hate for her because people hated her character and they think that she's exactly that person. But I promise you, Annie isn't rolling around stealing cars and fighting demons and blowing things up. Like she's really not doing that. She's in her house knitting, like genuinely, and looking after her chickens. Um, so yeah, no, Annie's awesome to work with. No problems at all.
Yeah, and while she was playing a exaggerated version of herself, obviously, as you've alluded to, some members of the general public or the audience perhaps didn't get that and thought it was a more faithful interpretation of Annie. So I'm
Yep.
wondering, were there any controversies as a result of Annie Hardy and her character, and how did you navigate them?
I remember when it first premiered at TIFF. So that was like a good 7, 8 months before it actually came out. So and the audience reaction was really good, but a couple of the journalists from there posted their kind of early TIFF reviews, um, just saying that it was a very controversial movie because of the protagonist, and like I just didn't understand that. I was like, this is a horror movie. We're meant to be horrified. Like, why why are we living in a world that's so sterile that we can't tell fact from fiction, and that we're offended by a horror movie? Horror movies are meant to offend. It's a horror movie. It's not called a peaceful chill time movie. It's a horror movie. Um, but I think that made it a bit more infamous, and that directly led to, I believe, to I think it was Odeon Cinemas banned Dashcam, um, and it was funny, and we only found out because someone on Twitter or Instagram posted their chat with a Odeon staff member because they were asking when's Dashcam coming out on the live chat, and the Odeon member, we will not have that movie at Odeon. We do not believe in movies like this, and like so. And that got picked up by all the news outlets and made people go, "Oh, what's this Dashcam movie?" Um, and so I was like, "Why is this so controversial?" And don't forget, a lot of people were calling it controversial, and they hadn't seen it because it wasn't even out yet. But like the reaction from people, oh my god, I can't believe there's a movie where a woman does this, a woman does that, and they hadn't seen the movie. Um, but the funny thing is, it premiered at the London Film Festival at Prince Charles Cinema, and got the best the best reaction. Everyone still talks about that screening because people were hooting and hollering and jumping up, and it was insane. And Paul, who runs the Prince Charles Cinema, I remember him running past me halfway through the film. He said, "Sorry, I'm going to puke." Like, because he'd seen it affected him so much he had to go puke in the outside. And I love that, especially at the London Film Festival. And it's funny because like the film journalists over here, and all over Europe actually absolutely loved it. But I think in America it was too close to home, because we're holding a mirror up to what's going on over there, and yeah, they didn't like it. Um, so it's real fun for me to see, because I think every other week, if you go on like the horror subreddit on Reddit, there's a post about Dashcam, and people fight to the death over Dashcam. Some people absolutely love it, and then some people absolutely hate it. And for me, that's a successful horror movie. Like, I love that.
Yeah, you don't want everyone to have a kind of lukewarm, "Oh, it
Yeah,
was all right" reaction.
exactly,
You want it to be polarizing. And
exactly.
I mean, for Odeon to say, "Oh, we don't support or we don't screen films like that," I'd be like, "Well, like what?
Don't
Can you
forget
be more
they hadn't ever
specific?"
seen
Yeah, so
they hadn't seen it. It premiered at the London Film
yeah.
Festival and blew everyone away. But yeah, and then it was like literally on the TV on the news, like Dashcam banned, blah blah blah. And we were like, "What is going on?" Like, but like it's like everything we do, like, we're always just like, "What's going on?" Like, this is crazy.
I mean, in a way, what Odeon did was give you invaluable publicity because it's so
Yeah,
bloody hard to have the equivalent of a video nasty or to actually get
that's
banned
exactly it.
these days. So they gave you a gift.
They called it a video nasty as well. Like,
Yeah.
and like, but the thing is, like I read about all the video nasties and watched documentaries on them, and about how at the time, like Sam Raimi had to appear in court for the Evil Dead because some people thought like a woman was really being attacked by a tree, and and being abused and stuff. He had to appear in court for that, and and that's one of the best horror movies of all time. So it happens, but I actually don't blame anyone for not liking a movie or hating the protagonist, because everyone's different. And I think as long as people watch it, and as long as people have some kind of feelings for it, like that's enough for me. The worst reaction would be absolute apathy and just a meh response. But I don't think you could ever have a meh response with Dashcam. It's either you love it or you hate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what you're saying about Sam Raimi, it reminds me of a particularly nasty, visceral film called August Underground.
Oh yeah, yeah, those
And
movies are crazy.
yeah, and I mean, I believe with that there was a story where I think it was either the director or writer, and they were kind of being held because they felt like this is a snuff movie. This woman is dead, and
Yeah,
she actually had to appear to prove, like, look, it was a film. But
yeah.
yeah,
It's the same with
that
Cannibal Holocaust. Like they
yeah.
had to appear in court as well, and brought the woman that was on the spike to say, "Look, she's alive. She's not dead." Um, but yeah, it's all the stuff wrapped up with interest in horror films. It always has a kind of reaction, and I think it's you know quite interesting, the reaction something like Dashcam got overseas with in America compared to in Europe, where there was literally I think it was an Independent or Guardian article about Dashcam saying that these guys are generational talents and stuff, and then uh, over in America it's like these guys are warped, crazy, um, yeah, it's insane. It was like, hey, we're just two guys like in London, it's nuts, but hopefully, you know, that changes. But and I also think because we're British, people don't expect that kind of movie from British people. They expect, you know, Keira Knightley swanning around in a see through dress, you know, like not flipping Annie Hardy having to clean up vomit and puke and piss and shit from a car and slipping in piss, and you know that's not what they expect from a British movie. So
Yeah, I think the craziest decision from Annie Hardy, the character in that film, is just that she takes the woman into the car to begin with. It's like, it's very clear that she is not in a good way. So
I
that was
know,
almost the most unbelievable part, which is ridiculous when you think about
yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah,
things
yeah.
that happen. But it's
But
like you,
yeah, we thought that as well. But like, I think I remember saying, okay, here's where we should say, like, Annie was like, nope, I don't want to do it, and then she gets offered an envelope of money, and then it cuts to her saying, you know, I'm a really nice person. People call me a really nice person, because you know she just did it for the money.
yeah.
You know, there's loads of crazy stuff in there. You know, sometimes I watch Dashcam, and I haven't watched it in quite a while now, but like the last time I watched it, I was just like, I can't believe we made this movie. It's because it's like insane, and like just the audacity of us doing the things we did. Like you could only make that movie coming off the back of something like Host, because no one else would have let us make it. So I'm really happy that we got to make our Evil Dead 2, basically.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking to Mick Garris, I was talking about how
I love
wild
Mick.
Sleepwalkers was for the
Oh, it
time and
is.
some of the
Yeah,
things that they put in there. I mean, I say for the time, that would
yeah.
still be pretty fucking wild if it came out
Yeah, Mick's a good friend of
today.
mine. Like I was just hanging out with him in LA, and he's always in London as well. So I hang out with him every time he's here. But Mick is one of the most incredible filmmakers you'll ever meet. And I know I haven't listened to the episode you did with him, but like I'm sure he had the best stories, because like every time I'm with Mick, I learn something about filmmaking, about life in general. Like he's a wise person, and yeah, just a real great guy. He's coming back over here soon as well, so I'll get to hang out with him again. I always love me and him. Last time we went to I took him to Milton Keynes to we went to see Inside Number Nine on stage in Milton Keynes, because yeah, Mick loves Inside Number Nine and the Inside Number Nine guys. Um, so yeah, but crazy times.
Yeah, I mean, Inside Number Nine is one of, if not my favorite anthology series.
So good.
I mean, actually, like if you count Masters of Horror as which it is a anthology series, but because
Yeah.
each film is made by someone different, it's a bit of a niche. Then yeah, Masters of Horror and Inside Number Nine would be tied
Oh
for
yeah.
first place.
Both like Inside Number Nine is incredible, and just the fact I love all those guys: Steve Pemberton, Reece Shearsmith, you know, and obviously the League of Gentlemen guys with Jeremy Dyson included. Like
Mm,
the bringing horror to British TVs is so rare, and they've managed to do it for the longest time. And then they use their skills to transfer it to the theatre as well. And you know, with Jeremy Dyson did Ghost Stories, and then they did Inside Number Nine, and like those guys are so amazing as well. And I've got to know them over the last couple of years as well, and it's been really like awesome. And you know, yeah, I want to see more stuff from them.
yeah, and of course, not forgetting Psychoville, which was
Oh, it was
another.
great. Love
Yeah.
Psychoville. Yeah, so good. Yeah, amazing guys, and hopefully I get to work with them on some stuff soon.
Wow. That would be really fascinating to see what, together you all come up with. So
Yeah, it could be sooner than you think. You never know. We'll see.
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Hmm.
And I mean, Flashback, which came out in 2023 and is a short film on Netflix, this is tonally very different. I love too that you're setting up that the only thing people can expect is the unexpected or to not know
Yes.
what you're going to do because Host to Dashcam, that was one thing,
Hmm.
but there was almost a logical continuation. But
Yeah.
Dashcam to Flashback, it's so understated. There's something very poignant and beautiful. There's a reflection on life and death. It's, of
Yes.
course, has something very Groundhog Day and Russian Doll
Hmm.
about it. So,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
what was the experience working on it, and how did it land with Netflix?
Um, so Netflix came to me. They approached my manager and said, "Hey, what's Jed got? And was Jed got any ideas to work with us?" And they were like, "Okay, we do this thing every year, which is called the Immersion Filmmaker of the Year thing, and they wanted me to be the Immersion Filmmaker of the Year for them 2023." And I was like, sounds good to me. And then, so basically, they were like, okay, we'll make this little short film and then we'll see where that goes. So, yeah, it was a Netflix original from the start. They came to me wanting to do it. And then, I had a bunch of ideas and, I pitched them a whole bunch of things. Some of them more horror, but but Flashback, which is basically a sci-fi film, um, that's the one that they grabbed onto straight away. And so much so they made me sign the contract for the feature length version like there and then as well. I had to sign the feature version that I'm going to write at some point um, over to them too, and it was fun because I had a really good team, and used a lot of the same people I always work with. Gemma's the lead in this again, like, and actually, all the host girls are in it. Like, blink and you'll miss it, but all the host girls are in Flashback. I just wanted to do something a bit different as well. Like, because people know me for, horror and scares and stuff. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit more, you know, meaningful and emotional. And one of my favorite movies of all time is, and again, a lot of people may not have seen this, but it's a 1980 Christopher Reeve movie called Somewhere in Time, and it's Christopher Reeve is the lead, and he plays a writer, a playwright, in fact, and he falls in love with a picture of a woman from the 1920s, um, and he is obsessed with this picture, and so much so that he goes back in time and to find her and make her fall in love with him, and I absolutely love everything to do with that movie, and not enough people have seen it. Amazing soundtrack, and I watch that movie all. It's my comfort movie. I watch it all the time, and yeah, it's pure sci-fi. And Jane Seymour plays the woman he goes back to in time to see, and in that film there is no time machine. He does it through thought, like because he obsessed with her so much so that the space and time isn't anything compared to the love he has for this woman that he's never met before. So like I have that in the back of my mind. Okay, a time travel movie without a machine. That I kind of like that idea. Um, but then I wanted to tie in like a kids TV show and a monster. Um, so Dr. Bones was born, and I think I had the Dr. Bones theme song in my mind uh, for a long time. I don't know why, like even before like Flashback, um, and working with Netflix, and I knew that I could do a few things I wouldn't be able to do before, like um, there's Netflix have a bigger budget. I got to meet everyone at Netflix, all the different departments, and I learned a lot from that process. Just what all the departments at Netflix do, and really, really interesting. And the VFX in Flashback are like unbelievably good for a short film. The kind of time travel spinny sequence, which you know, like I can go back to that to point to people like this is what I can do. If you give me the money, I can do a swirly time travel thing if you want me to. But like yeah, the great thing with Flashback that I'll always remember is that obviously it was great working with Netflix, but Sam Raimi was my mentor on the whole project as well. So I would talked to him about the script, and then in production, like he was helping with that too. And then in post, he helped with my edit and some of the effects and things. So he helped me all the way through it, which was really really cool. Just to be able to bounce ideas of someone like Sam Raimi, because he's experimented with like different genres as well. Like he's done sci-fi and superhero and dramas and stuff. So yeah, and he was loving it as well. So, and I also like, and another thing I wanted to throw in, I was like, I really want to do something in a laser quest. Um, so I was just like, oh, Netflix have money. Let's go. Let's go have a big scene with loads of kids running around with lasers in a laser quest. Um, and yeah, so we did it. It was like me playing in like a someone else's toy box for a little while, and like made like a Dr. Bones arcade machine, and oh yeah, it was so cool. And like because like all the host girls were there as well. It was really nice, and um, yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, Laser Quest feels like such a British birthday party event, like so many
We did it.
childhood memories. Yeah,
Yeah, the scene where you see her birthdays as she
yeah.
kind of gets older, um, until she's like 13 or something. And like the laser quest like changes to kind of to match that. It's yeah, it's really cool to be able to do it in a real laser quest, one of the actual real laser quests left in London, um in Enfield, in fact. We filmed it in. So yeah, it was fun. And Pip's in it. Pip plays Gemma's dad, but little Gemma's dad. And Yeah, it's great to work with him on that. And Amma, who was in Dashcam, he plays Stretch in Dashcam. He plays Gemma's boyfriend again for the second time in this. I just like working with the same people over and over again. It just makes it easy for me because I know them. They're my friends. And if I could, I would just cast my friends in everything. It would just make things a lot easier. And Netflix were like so open to me, just basically doing it my way, and they trusted me. And we the great thing with Netflix is they show you the stats, of how many people have watched it around the world and stuff, and it exceeded expectations like a lot. And but it did really really well in Japan, coincidentally. It did. I don't know why. Like no one can figure out. It did really well in Japan. Did really well in India. It did really well in South America, like above North America and the UK. Um, Insane.
Yeah, I know that in Japan, Host is just simply called Zoom because I
Yeah,
rewatched it ahead of our conversation, and
yeah,
it was like, oh, it's called Zoom.
yeah, yeah. It's called Zoom. Yeah, and I remember like Emily at Shudder saying, okay, like in different regions, it would work better under different names, and I was like, I really just wanted to be called Host, but she was right. I think in Mexico it was called "Don't Pick Up the Phone." For some reason, it was called that, and then in Russia, weirdly, it was called Astral 2 because there was a horror movie that did really well over there called Astral. So they wanted to, so the distributors over there was just like, oh, let's make this a sequel to Astral. So it was called Astral 2, and it did well over there too. So yeah, it was very interesting, because it was really my first foray into like releasing something worldwide. So um, yeah, I learned a lot from that process.
I wonder what even the legalities are of just like, right, Astral did well. We're gonna call it Astral 2. Like, can
Yeah,
I be like, this is the remains of the day 2? Just slap it on.
yeah.
on-
Well, I haven't even seen Astral, but like I'm guessing there was similar in theme. I have no idea, but they were so sure and they were right. It worked. So yeah, and like yeah, it's called Zoom in a bunch of places around the world as well. Um, which I wonder how Zoom feel about that, because I don't know if there was permission to name it after their actual app. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I imagine that they surely can't have copyright on the word Zoom because it's too common a word. But you know,
yeah,
the WWF World Wildlife Federation sued the wrestling company, so
yeah,
who knows?
exactly. But hopefully, hopefully in those regions where they saw it under different names, they did a little bit of research and they saw it as Host. Though I do have the posters of like it's saying Zoom and the other regions. I have all those posters because it's quite funny to me.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I wonder, what does a typical working day and a typical working week look like for you? Because obviously you have a number of projects, you're writing, you're pitching, you're going on set. What
Mhm.
is a typical day and a typical week?
I wish there was a typical day and a typical week, but it's always different. Like I can tell you what I'm doing like on Monday. Like I've got a script I need to finish a new draft of. Um, I am on a project which is coming out on BBC One on Halloween. Can't say what it is, but it's that Ghostwatch slot, that juicy Ghostwatch slot. So I am really happy about that. So that's being filmed right now. So I'm on call for that. Um, I'm a produ- I'm a producer on an upcoming movie. It's another found footage movie, but it's with a very very big director. We're producing it together, and it's being released through a big studio. So that hopefully that's soon. I think we'll start shooting that this year. I've got a folk horror film that we are casting right now. So I've just got an update today about the casting on that. Yeah, I'm a producer on a whole bunch of other projects as well, and pitching a whole bunch of things. Uh, but it's you have to have a lot of irons in the fire because you don't know what's going to spark. You don't really know. Um, so so yeah, but that's the thing. Creators have to be creative in order to keep doing this stuff.
And do you have a typical time when you prefer to write or that you set aside as your writing time?
Yes. Well, it's actually changed recently because it used to be 9 a.m. to 12 would be solid writing. And I got that from one of your former guests, actually, Paul Tremblay. And he got that from Stephen King. Um, so, yeah, because like I'm friends with Paul and, I'm always asking questions about writing, but he asked me questions about writing. I'm like, Paul, you're the master. You wrote Head Full of Ghosts, one of the greatest horror books of all time. Um, but yeah, he said like he writes in the morning basically, and then stops, and then does his life admin stuff and spends time with his kids and stuff. And I think that's really useful to have a set time every single day to do your writing, and then spend your life living rather than procrastinating at a blank screen. So yeah, I always set like a block of time, like 3 hours a day. But it used to be in the morning, but now I am much more productive in the evening times. So I write under the cover of darkness now. I put music on, and it's always a soundtrack to like what the potential movie is going to be. So I make a playlist and I play that while I'm writing to get me in the mood. Um, yeah, I love doing stuff like that.
It's interesting that you bring up Paul because I would say, in terms of books that we have, that A Head Full of Ghosts is as close to a found footage book as
Yeah.
we've got. Although recently, Josh Malaman, with Incidents Around the House, has given A Head Full of Ghosts a run for its money in terms of like being the master of found footage horror books. But I mean, both are essential reading.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And with and both have been made into a movie right now, and
Yeah.
like I cannot wait to see Head Full of Ghosts because I speaking to Paul, I know the process he's been through with that film and the adaptation of it. It's been a long road, and obviously, I was trying to get in there myself as well. I was like, Paul, you need to let me do this, and he was like, well, these people have the rights, but that's lapsing some other people. But then it's so highly sought over. So I believe that the version that's going to be made now is the true version because previous versions weren't true to the book, but now this version, according to Paul, is closer to what he wrote, and what he wrote was masterful. So I cannot wait.
Yeah, well, this happens often that, you'll have something that's up for film adaptation, and then for whatever reason, the rights are let go of or lapse.
Yeah,
But then the second person, or the third or fourth or fifth in some cases, have a better vision. And so then the film that is ultimately made is the one that you would have wanted to have been
yeah.
made in the first place. I mean, at the moment, I'm going through a similar process with one of my books, The Girl in the Video. It was originally with Netflix, and
Yeah,
they had a script and everything, but it just veered a little bit too far from the original source material. But
yeah. It was
right,
okay. It was okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but right now, there's a new screenwriter on board. We're pitching it at the moment, and it's so just accurate as to what I wanted. So
Oh, nice. That's cool.
yeah, I think sometimes a no now is because there's a better yes in the future, right? I think that's a good
Exactly.
way to look at things.
Oh yeah, like positivity breeds positivity. Like I'm
Yeah,
always a glass half full person, and you really have to be. And I think when all is said and done, and like I'm at the end of my life, I want to look back and be like, okay, I was mostly positive, which which I think helps you more if you're always moaning. Because I see a lot of people moaning online about their projects not being greenlit and this and that, and I'm like, keep that to yourself. Don't you don't need to broadcast that. Keep it to yourself, or among your friends. Don't spread negativity online because that negativity will come straight back at you. Um, but it's hard because it's a real hard game. Like trying to be creative. So I understand when people feel the need to vent sometimes.
yeah, yeah. I get it, but I also just try to get on with things. It's like, well, even if that one hasn't been greenlit, there's a ton of other things that I'm doing at the moment, and
Oh yeah.
I just try and think about any action I take, what will it ultimately achieve? Me getting upset about something being passed on or not greenlit or whatever it is
Hmm.
not going to actually benefit me. It's not going to result in a good opportunity. So I think if I'm really upset, it's like, okay, fine. Give yourself 5 minutes to be upset about it
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
now move on.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I mean, we're coming up to the time that we have together today.
Yeah.
But I want, before we go, there is a video game that you have in the works called
Hmm.
Ghosts. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit interested to find out about that. But I also want to know about your journey as a gamer, as a fan of horror video games. I mean, is
Hmm.
this something that you've been into for a long time? Do you remember the
Yeah.
first horror video game that you played?
Yeah, there's actually a documentary coming out where I'm in it. We're talking about this very thing. Um, yeah, I think the first horror video game I played was the original game. I think it was for the C64, maybe it was the Amiga, for Friday the 13th, which I love that. To this day, I still love how scary that game is. And it's like, 8-bit, and it's still scary, and the music's scary. Um, but my video game it's a live action video game, with the host girls, and been a long process, but finally it's going to come out, and it's fun because like the thing is with like being a storyteller, you want your stories to reach as many people as possible, and the games industry is far bigger than the film industry. Like think 5 times bigger. So if you want to tell a story, and you want it to reach as many people as possible, video games are a real start, and the crossover between video games and films, it's becoming a paper thin. I just watched Exit 8. I went to a screen of it a couple of days ago.
I
uh,
literally watched it a day ago too.
yeah, it's so good. I think it's the best video game adaptation I've ever seen, and such a good movie. I love it. And most people won't even know it's a video game, which is great. But the film is great as a standalone, and I think horror filmmakers, especially, should look into video games because it's becoming easier to make. It's becoming, you can learn how to do some of the stuff yourself, but like there is a lot of crossover between the video game audience and the film audience, of course. So yeah, we're going to see that a lot more. I had a meeting last week. I've been offered, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've been offered to write and direct a popular video game adaptation, um, and so that process is happening as we speak. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go down that route, but I'm letting the process happen organically and see what happens. But it would be a real interesting one to do. See what my take is on that particular video game.
Oh, well, I'm totally intrigued about that, and I might have to ask you off air
Yeah,
what we're
yeah.
talking about here. But to kind of finish, I want to know what is the best and what is the worst writing advice that you have ever been given?
I think it was Paul Tremblay when he said, "Just spend 3 hours a day writing, and then go and do the rest of your life stuff." And honestly, that's been really helpful for me because I used to be the kind of person that would just sit in front of a blank page all day and just absolutely, you know, go crazy trying to write something interesting. But then when I know I only have a short space of time, a small window to write in, it's so free and it just comes out. And the rest of the time, you can still think about it, and you can, oh yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to put this in. You can still make notes, and then the next day you have like a bunch of notes, you have a bunch of thoughts, and you write that in, and it just becomes a lot more organic and easy to kind of write if you set a certain amount of time. I think so. That's been really really helpful. Um, and I think that maybe the worst advice, and it wasn't one person in general, but I feel like, especially for screenwriters, some people feel that if you're not using the right software, you're not using Final Draft, then you're not a writer. That's complete tosh. Write on anything. Write it in notes. Write it in Word. Write it in Google Docs, like we did with Host. Doesn't matter. If the story's good, the story's good. And if someone judges you because you haven't spent 300 quid on some software, then they're not the person you want to be making a movie with. Um, I mean, it does look nice in Final Draft format. I will say that, but you don't necessarily need it. So, yeah, and just the other general advice that I would say for myself is just be nice to everyone. Like, it's free, and uh, yeah, you can do it easy. Just be nice to people, and if you see people doing well, support them. If you see people not doing well, support them, because that could easily be you in either of those situations, and you want people to kind of come around and support you. So just be very supportive to your fellow filmmakers, especially in the UK, because it's really hard. And and yeah, that's it really.
All right. Well, where can listeners and viewers connect with you?
I'm only really on Instagram now, so at Jed Shepherd, JedShepherd. I do have a Twitter handle, but I haven't used Twitter in about 2 years, I think now, maybe a year, just because it's crazy on there. So I really only use Instagram, and I barely even post. I'm going to try and be that person that isn't on social media, um, unless I have something to promote. Then maybe I will have to be. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, basically, or in real life in London at horror events and screenings. I'm always there.
All right. Well, this has been a tremendous pleasure chatting with you,
You
getting
too,
to
man.
learn more about your films and your creative process. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
Do you have any final thoughts to leave the listeners and viewers with?
My final thoughts are watch the 1984 classic Night of the Comet, and because it's the greatest movie ever made.